My name is Richard Rowley, and I'm here with Donald Moses at his daughter's home in Albuquerque today. And I've known Mr. Moses for a long, long time. He was a friend of my father's, and I've always known him as Fuzzy, but I did know that his actual given name was Donald. Mr. Moses, how are you today?
Just fine, thank you.
Well, good. You, I understand, are willing to do an oral history with us for the state bar this afternoon so we can kind of preserve you for posterity, so to speak. Is that agreeable?
I'll be glad if you ratify me for posterity.
Okay. Well, I know when we got here earlier, my wife asked how in the world you got the nickname Fuzzy, but I want to get that on this tape. So if you could, just for the people that are going to look at this, explain that.
Well, I was born in Santa Rita, New Mexico, which is a copper town, 16 miles east of where Silver City is. They sent my dad up to Gallup to run a coal mine because they had to have coal to operate all the steam shovels they had and the steam engines that they had. And when I was up in Gallup, we lived out at 3 miles north of Gallup at Gamerco for Gallup American Coal Company, combined name. And I was lucky enough to have a swimming pool there in town, and I had hair on my chest and all over my body. And when I was 13 years old, one of these kids said, "Well, Fuzzy!"
Well, it stuck for a long time, didn't it? So, were you born in Santa Rita?
I was born in Santa Rita.
When was that?
1911, the year before it became a state.
So you're what, 96 years old now?
96 now. Your dad would be that old.
Yeah, he was actually born in 1908, so he would have been a little older if he's still with us. Tell me a little bit about your parents, your growing up, and your brothers and sisters, and so on.
Well, I had an older brother who was killed in an automobile accident in East Liverpool, Ohio. He was back there operating or working for a coal mining company. And that was the oldest child. Then came next. I was Donald. Then I had my sister, Elsie. She was a couple of years younger than me. And then a younger brother, 13 years younger than I, came along in 1923, and he went to West Point and was a soldier at West Point, and he lives in Albuquerque now. My sister died of lung cancer when she was an adult, and that's about
So you do have one brother that's still living?
I have one brother still living.
Now, your father, I think you indicated that he was somehow ran the mines or some of the mines down in Santa Rita when you were...
He ran the mines in Santa Rita, and he later, after he had been in Gallup in about 1937 or so, he was transferred to Santa Rita again to become general manager of the company.
Well, did you attend schools in Santa Rita, or where did you attend school?
I attended schools in Santa Rita, Gallup, and New Mexico Military Institute.
Oh, was that the junior college part of it?
That was the junior college part of it. I attended that school, and then I went to the University of New Mexico for a year and a half. I thought I wanted to be a lawyer, and I wanted to go to settle in California because my aunt lived out there. But I went out there and lived with her for 6 months, and she wanted me to play bridge all the time, and I couldn't do it and do anything but study. So I quit that school and went to Boulder, University of Colorado.
Is that where you got your law degree?
That's where I got my law degree.
What year did you get that?
Got that in 1934.
Is there anything that you can think of that kind of led you towards going to law school when you were a young man? Or, with your background, it seemed kind of interesting to me that you would end up wanting to go to law school.
Well, I had a brother, no, not a brother, but a cousin living in California who was a lawyer, and he went to Silver City later on and then returned to California, and there he committed suicide. And he was a very, very learned guy, a nice fellow, but he had troubles.
But that's kind of who talked you,
Yeah,
inspired you to go to law school?
And then besides that, Colin Neblett, who was later appointed federal district judge of New Mexico, was appointed from Silver City, where he'd been district judge and had other burnings. And he was the district judge, and I was named after him. He's my godfather.
Oh.
And that's another example of the connection with the legal profession.
Well, did you come to Albuquerque then directly after law school?
I came directly to Albuquerque after law school, yes.
Did you go into private practice? Or?
I went into private practice with two old Republican and Democratic governors, Governor Merritt C. Meacham and A.T. Hannett, a Democrat. And they had Waldo H. Rogers, who had been at school at Boulder before me, in the office, and that was the office that I attended.
Did you
originally started with?
Okay, there. So how long did you work in that office?
I worked in that office until 1930, the end of 1940, and.
Now, did you work for the U.S. Attorney's Office for a period of time?
I worked as assistant district attorney for Owen B. Mann as a district attorney from 36 till 40, and then I went up to Santa Fe to take the office left by the death of Dick Manson. And I was appointed to succeed him as assistant district attorney, and I went up to Santa Fe and stayed there until the war started.
Then did you serve in the military after the war started?
I served in the military from about July of 82 until December of 65, no, 45.
42 to 45?
Yeah.
What branch of the service were you in for?
I was an infantryman. They found a good place for me.
So where did you serve then in the military?
I served in the United States, and then I served in England and France, and across Germany, and ended up in the Army in Germany.
Did you, at any point, were you able to use any of your lawyer training while you were in the military?
I did. I became a military government officer after the war was over. And I attended a school in Frankfurt, Germany, and then spent about 3 or 4 months in the military government.
Did you then, once you were discharged, come right back to Albuquerque?
Came right back to Albuquerque. Got here in December of '65, and that was it.
Well, let me ask you this: while you were in the military, were you in any battles that were of any?
The only one I was in was the Battle of Normandy. I was in infantry in Normandy, and didn't go to the front until D+6, and on D+10 I was hit and returned to England, and then I got back in shape again, and again joined the 90th Division, part of the 3rd Army, and stayed with them throughout the war. That's about it.
Okay. Were you, when you were in Germany, did you act as a judge advocate or a judge at any time when you were in the military?
I acted as a judge advocate and as a trial judge, a summary trial judge, and had some experience with the military government.
What kind of a rank did you have when you were doing that? Because you indicated the way you talked, you went in as a buck private or whatever, and did you advance through the ranks in the military?
Well, I advanced at the outset. I went into the service under the doctrine of military government, of adopting people they thought would be good officers, and I was a first lieutenant when I left the service.
Oh, okay. So when you came back to Albuquerque after the war in 1945, did you go back into practice with anybody, or?
I returned to the job that I had with the U.S. Attorney, only at that time they told me I could live in Albuquerque. And so I returned. I had been up in Santa Fe before, and I returned to Albuquerque.
Were you married at that time, Fuzzy?
I was married at that time. I had been married before I went into the service.
Now, was that Olive?
Olive Moses.
Right, I knew Olive, and I know she passed away a number of years ago. Yeah. And you have, how many children do you have?
We had 3 children. Our present daughter, in whose home we are today, Joanne, is our middle child. And we had Alice Wasco. She married a fellow by the name of John Wasco. And she was the eldest. And then the youngest one was Horace J. Moses.
Okay. Are your children all alive and living?
No, Horace J. died. He died, and also my first daughter died with the cancer of the breast.
Oh, okay. So Joanne here that you're living with now is your one living child who lives here in Albuquerque.
That is correct.
Well, tell me, when did you get out of the government job and go into private practice again?
Well, I got into the government job, and in April of '96.
46? 46?
46, yeah. I took off to become city attorney of Albuquerque, and I held that job during the jurisdiction of Clyde Tingley, with whom I had lots of fun, but he didn't like me too well either. He got rid of me in about a year and 3 or 4 months.
Well, who, over the years, now I know you had your own practice and you built it up and have still got it. There's a practice here in town that bears your name.
Yeah.
But who are some of the people that you've partnered with and practiced law with over the years that you can think of that come to mind?
I practiced primarily with the DA, District Attorney Owen B. Marin. With other attorneys in the office were Gino J. Matuzzi and A.H. McLeod. We were known as the 4M men. There were four people in the district attorney's office with names I've given you. And then after I joined the Attorney General's office, the U.S. Attorney's office, I was under District Attorney Everett Grantham and Gino, not Gino, but his name was Espinosa. Gilbert Espinosa was a well-known attorney, and I practiced with him, and that was about it.
Well, I knew Gino Matuzzi and I knew McLeod, and you guys must have had a heck of a good time together.
We did have a good time.
I could just imagine. I was told that you were involved rather extensively in a lot of the condemnation work that went on years ago with I-40, maybe I-25. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I did some condemnation work when I was in the state district attorney's office, but that was before I-40 or I-25 were mentioned. But as a result of my doing some work in both those jobs, I also did some work for the state of New Mexico in the acquisition of right-of-way for I-40 and I-40 and I-35. I acquired a good portion of the property for those projects.
That must have taken a considerable amount of time to get those pulled together.
Took quite a while.
You could have made a career out of that, I would think.
Yeah.
Just about, anyway. Then the other one, now you also practiced law, I think I remember, with Bob Nordhouse back a number of years ago.
I practiced with Bob Nordhouse. There was Nordhouse and Moses at one time. And then Bob was opening the ski project up on the mountain and built the ski transmittal going up the mountain in our office. And I stayed with him until we decided to split up. And he stayed primarily in the Indian practice, and I went off into the fields of other fields of law.
What areas of law did you really spend most of your time in over your career?
That was primarily condemning property for the State Highway Department, and I worked with the title companies. I was an incorporator of a New Mexico title company, which at that time did a lot of work in building Albuquerque. And then I went into some other law, general practice.
Well, now, you were there then, I guess, when we kind of went from the transition from examining abstracts and doing things that way when we moved into the title insurance end of the real estate business?
That's right. We were in the time of the change, and I did a lot of examining abstracts before we made the change for the company, and then did a lot of work for the title company after that generally.
You'd probably be one of the only lawyers still around that still would know how to examine an abstract, would be my guess.
Well, there's some.
There's probably a few, but not very many.
Not many.
I know that. What about Jethro Vaught? Wasn't he affiliated with him for a while?
Jethro Vaught and I were attorneys for the New Mexico Title Company.
And then Jethro, I guess, didn't he go off into the bankruptcy area?
He went off in the bankruptcy area. It's kind of a funny thing. I didn't want to get involved anymore, being drafted into the service as a private and work my way up. I joined the National Guard, and in the course of that, I went down, was examined by the National Guard, and got stuck in the Korean Korean War in New Mexico, terribly situated. And I stayed here all the time, but Jethro continued on with the title company, and he finished up with the title company.
Okay. Let me ask you about another case that I know that I was told I should ask you about, and that had to do with a fellow by the name of Echeverry. Does that ring a bell with you?
Sam Echeverry, yeah.
What was that all about?
Sam Echeverry was a graduate of the Carlsbad High School, Carlsbad High School, and he went to school at Denver University. And at that time, Denver University had a little football team. It wasn't as big as University of Colorado, but it had a fair team, and he was a quarterback. And he excelled as a quarterback and was in demand for professional production in that line, and he did go to Montreal with the Alouettes. The Alouettes was the name of the Montreal team.
Canadian football team.
Yeah, Canadian football team, and I was representing Echeverry as an adjunct to my representation of his uncle Iggy Mulcahy. Iggy was a basketball player and a famous coach and player of basketball. And that's the way that I got involved in that.
Okay, well, what was that case about? Somebody told me something about an antitrust thing or something?
Well, Nordhouse fought the antitrust part of the battle, and I fought the general battle of just plain old law. That was withdrawal of an acceptance that Echeverry had sent from Albuquerque in the mail, and then came to my office and told me about it, and we wired the Cardinals, the name of the team in Chicago, Albuquerque, or Chicago Cardinals. And we wired them a letter reserving and retaining jurisdiction and refusing to accept the contract. And then Echeverry came out to New Mexico and hired Dick Modrell, Modrell, Sperling, Rail, Harris, and so forth. And we had quite a lawsuit about it. It was a really, really great fun.
That sounds like it must have been a kind of a fun time.
Yeah.
Was Echeverry, did he play professional football in the United States? That name sure was familiar to me.
I don't think he ever played in the United States. He played for quite a while for the Alouettes, and he was very famous for the Alouettes.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this, Fuzzy. You know, I know, of course, you were practiced law for a long time, and I think you told me earlier that you retired when you were 86, just gave it up altogether about 10 years ago. But what other activities did you belong to? Service clubs, get involved in any kind of other activities besides just practicing law while you were a young man raising a family here in Albuquerque?
Well, I did join some clubs, but I never did get too involved. I didn't pursue Masonic lines too long, and I pretty much practiced my own profession.
Well, I know you were for a number of years involved in state bar activities.
Yeah. And that was my chief activity, was being a representative of the state bar as in the House, the commission affairs, and I became president of the state bar, and then I worked with the American Bar Association, and in the capacity of first as a representative of the member, the New Mexico State Bar Association, as a member of the American Bar Association, and then I became an individual member of the House of Delegates of the American Bar Association by remaining and representing the state of New Mexico representatives independent of the Bar Association, of the State Bar Association.
How long were you active with the American Bar Association?
I was active a good number of years until my eyes got bad on me, and I gave it up.
Well, I know that you and Olive, because, you know, I've attended a lot of bar conventions over the years, and even some with my parents before I was a lawyer, and I knew that there was going to be Bob Skinner and his wife, and Jim Jennings and his wife, and Fuzzy Moses and Olive, and there were just people that were always there at those bar conventions, and I know you and Olive were always at bar conventions. At least that's my recollection of it.
Well, that is true. We attended every meeting for years, and regardless of where it may be, we attended. And I was very happy with it, and was very, very successful in being a member of that association.
Well, I remember that you and your compadres always seemed to have a lot more staying power than the younger people did at the bar meetings. I mean, you know, you guys seem to be able to go all day and all night and plus, and I was always amazed with that.
Well, we were pretty good members. We stayed up in the hotel from the beginning of it till the end of it.
Well, one of my fondest memories, and I don't know whether you'll remember this or not, but it was at the Sallyport Inn when the bar convention was held in Roswell years ago, and I had been with you and a number of others that evening doing what always was going on at bar conventions, especially after the meetings. And I remember I got up early the next morning and felt terrible. I had to go to a meeting, and as I was going down through the lobby, you were going through swinging a tennis racket in a tennis outfit, and you were on your way to play tennis, and I couldn't imagine how you could feel good enough to play tennis. And I was really impressed with your ability, your staying power, let me put it that way.
Well, thank you very much.
I don't know whether you remember that or not, but it's a vivid memory of mine.
Okay, well, I remember the association, but I don't remember the particular part.
Okay. While you were practicing law before you quit, Fuzzy, tell me what you noticed being the biggest changes in the practice of law from the time you started till the time you left, and whether you think those changes are for the better or for the worse, or how would your view be of that?
Well, I'd like to have my daughter hand me the papers that she's got that refresh me as far as numbers are concerned.
Okay.
Just in numbers?
Yeah, let me.
Dad, I don't think you can read those, but. Here, let me have it. And you asked me what you need the numbers for.
First, I was going to tell about joining the bar of New Mexico, and at that time there were 406 or so lawyers. Is that right?
409, yeah.
And besides, that was for 406 lawyers were joined in the state bar, and I
bet you knew every one of them.
I knew lots of them. In any event, there was a total at that time of 406 plus 25. That was the plus 25 that I attended law school with, or attended one thing or another with in getting ready for the bar. And we were admitted only during our good behavior, and that was presumed to be over within 1 year.
So there was a 1 year waiting period?
A 1 year late waiting period that we were admitted to the bar. Your dad was in the same category.
Well, now, is that you'd taken a bar exam and passed it, but you didn't actually get a permanent license for a year?
Well, the license was issued, but provided that it could be upset if we didn't mature properly, and it was looked upon as a year was the period that we were in doubt.
So it was a provisional license.
Yeah.
Well, I'd never heard of that.
Yeah, and
well, I guess you guys then all behaved yourselves okay then, huh?
We darn sure did. And I was going to tell you about that. When I started practicing law, there was one lawyer in the state of New Mexico who had a federal appointment, and that was Judge Colin Neblett, my godfather. And that was the only federal judge in New Mexico. Then at the same time I came to Albuquerque, I started practicing law, and there was one district judge for Bernalillo County and for Sandoval County to the north of us, and Valencia County to the south of us. One lawyer was the district judge, Joseph L. Daly, and at that time, he was in attendance for all things, and he was not. He was the only lawyer representing as a member of the judiciary who had anything to do with practice of law.
So he had all three counties?
He had all three counties. And then it only lasted a couple of years, and then they started branching off.
Well, how big was Albuquerque? What was the population in Albuquerque?
Albuquerque was roughly 35,000 people.
Well, things have changed a little, haven't they?
Yeah, and there were approximately there was 4,000. And I told you 4,006 when I joined the bar, and that was the town of Albuquerque, and we didn't have a city attorney. No, I'll take it back. We did have a city attorney. It was Will Kelleher was the city attorney, and there were no assistant district attorneys except for Joe Whitehouse was a lawyer, and he was assistant district attorney under Thomas J. Mabry.
Now, Thomas Mabry, he was the one that later became governor, wasn't he?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let me ask you this, Fuzzy. You know, knowing what you know and what you've seen in the law practice over the years, if somebody asked you, if some 17, 18-year-old kid came up to you and asked you and said, would you think the legal profession would be a good profession to get into, what would you tell them today?
I would tell them that I'm quit. Well, my physical condition was poor, and I wasn't able to read well, and so I was kind of disassociated a bit with the law. I would have told them that I would go to the law school and get a law degree, and then decide whether I wanted to practice or not.
Well, I know that a law degree course can lead into a lot of different things besides practicing law. Yeah. Well,
And that was my decision in that regard. In that connection, there were in the state of New Mexico when I joined it. There were those 400 lawyers, 400 lawyers, and it continued growing rather rapidly. And when I retired from the practice of law in '96, there were 5,881 lawyers in New Mexico.
I'm sure that I don't know what there is today, but I know there's over 6,000 easily. Let me ask you this. I know, of course, back when you went to law school, the University of New Mexico, well, there wasn't a law school in New Mexico. Did you have any involvement with seeing that we finally got a law school in this state back I think in the 50s?
Yeah, I remember the first time that they were brought up law school was in the 1940 convention. I think your dad was probably there at the convention.
Probably so.
And we were asked, and I was not in favor of a law school. I thought it was kind of getting overexcited about the practice of law. And I thought that we could do better by having other parts of the school advanced. So I didn't jump out and saying gung ho, let's have a big law school. Of course, I was running contrary to the law. All the good lawyers and top-notch lawyers in Mexico who felt that it would be good to have a good law school.
Well, you were able to keep it out for a while because I don't think it came around until about the mid-50s, something like that?
Yeah, it was the mid-50s when they got the law school started.
Let me ask you this. One of the things that I know I've heard lawyers from your generation complain about or talk about is the way that lawyers nowadays can advertise, where, of course, back when you were first starting practicing law, that was an absolute taboo. How do you feel about that?
I think that the practice of law is a privilege that goes above advertising in the papers or on the radio or telegraph. I don't approve of it.
Well, I always thought that lawyers your age would, I know my dad always thought he'd be rolling over in his grave if he saw what was going on now with some of the advertising, but I guess you do it, or a lot of people do it just to survive anymore.
A lot of people do it just to survive, and sometimes they don't survive too well either.
Well, let me ask you this, Fuzzy, have you got any other things that you can think about that's happened during your legal career that you'd kind of like to mention or talk about, because this interview is going to be preserved for a long time, and now's your chance if there's anything else that you'd want to talk about.
Well, I think that the main thing is the change in the nature of the people who are learning to be lawyers. There were no women, but very few who were interested in practice of law when I started off. Very, very few. And they increased by bounds and bounds. And the lawyers have increased in size and in spreading out amongst the other groups of people other than Anglo-Saxon lawyers. There are many lawyers that are lawyers purely through love of their country, and there are Spanish lawyers are amongst the chief ones of them. And there have been some lawyers that we've had that are colored lawyers that are very good lawyers, and they're a warrant to the profession. But I don't think that it should be said that lawyers are boons to the society and the way to get rich. I think that it needs to be done by people who want to live a good life and do their country some good.
Amen.
Now, that's about the way I feel about lawyers.
Now, your firm, how many people, do you know how many people are actually, or how many people are in your firm now? I know
There's 13 people, or no, 11 people in my firm now.
And do you still have contact with most of those people?
I have contact with most of them. That is, the ones that were practicing with me. And some of them I know only through association with their superiors. But I think that they're good lawyers and certainly have done a good job.
But I know that your firm's got a great reputation, and I think you ought to be real proud of it. I'll try and help make sure that they never take your name off of that firm.
Well, I don't know. They could, they'd probably warrant your doing a rough job.
Okay, well, I'm going to, Fuzzy, I really appreciate you taking the time to visit with me. It's been great. It's been nice seeing you, and they'll have a video of this interview that they'll send you. You probably won't be able to see much of it, but you can at least hear it. And if you decide that you said something you shouldn't have said, well, you need to holler at them and tell them, and they'll correct it for you, okay?
I'll holler about the whole thing.
Okay, nice to see you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much.